Good evening and welcome to the November 12th, 2019 Planning Commission's meeting. We can have roll call, Shannon?
Messina?
Here.
Fleming? Here. Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Mandel? Here. Rumpler?
Here.
Ward?
Here.
Thank you. If we can stand for the pledge, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have approval of minutes for the October 8th, 2019 meeting.
Move approval.
I have an approval. I have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, we can have, can you hear me? No one can hear me. How about now? Okay. At this time, we're going to do public comments, which would be anything other than the items that are on the agenda. So if anyone wants to come up to the podium and address
Chairman.
any other items.
Chairman Messina, I don't think the motion on the minutes was completed.
Oh, okay. Regarding the approval of the motion,
I seconded it.
First and second,
And I vote aye.
All those in favor?
we had first, there voted aye.
all in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. You couldn't hear me, okay.
Well, the mic was off.
Thank you. No problem. Public comments, so if anyone wants to come up to the podium to address any other items that are on the agenda tonight, you're welcome to come up. Okay, just give us your name
My name is Toby Sheldon,
and go right ahead, Toby.
and you'll have to excuse me because I have never done this before, but I have a passion about what you're doing. I don't have a problem with everything on the land, but I have a serious concern with regards to the way that the water distribution on the river has been presented mechanically on a piece of paper. You have a dock that has a number of slips. I lived on the river for 11 years, and I understand the dynamics of what's going on there. I'm not sure if anybody is quite concerned about the length and width of the problems that the boating audience community will use or have access to. But if you put that dock there, and I spoke to the Department of Lands this morning, and you're probably not going to get the dock the way it's presented. And I think that's a disservice to the community that you're representing, because none of the things that have been stated or visually demonstrated have been accepted by the Department of Lands, with the exception of the shore established riprap, whatever you want to call it. Now, unless I'm mistaken, and I spoke to the lead guy today, that's not a good policy to have from a commission's perspective. I've written down a number of things, and I just want to throw these out to you.
Mr. Chairman,
Concern me.
Yes,
sorry to
go right
interrupt, but I
ahead.
believe he's commenting on the Atlas, which is a public hearing item tonight. So it might be best to have him come back up during the public hearing item on the agenda.
Sorry. I almost didn't come because I'm very hard of hearing.
Oh,
Would you
I'm
please
sorry.
repeat that, please?
Yes, and I don't know, okay, it sounds like the microphone's working. So you're just talking about the Atlas Waterfront Project, and that is a public hearing on the agenda. And so I was suggesting to the commission and the chairman that we should have you come back up during that item. Because what we do is we have a comment sheet or a sign-up sheet.
I'm not sure if he said that that was what we were talking about first. Am I wrong?
Right now is public comments on anything that's not on the agenda.
that's not on the agenda.
Right, and then the,
Hearing, I
that's
was right.
okay, no problem.
No problem.
So we can have you sign up on
Going to
the
hear from me again.
that list? Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Hillary, for that. While we're on that subject, if anyone wants to speak on the items that we have on the public hearing tonight, there are some sign-up sheets that you can sign up, and you can speak on those items when I call your name later on. And staff is over there to help you to fill out the form if you need to. So at this point, again, I'll ask if anyone wants to come up to speak about anything that is not on the agenda tonight. Come on up. And this is regarding something completely different than what's on the agenda
Okay,
tonight.
this is about the hospital corridor.
No, that would be on an item that we'll,
No, that
I
one's not a
didn't-
public hearing, though.
I didn't see a sign-up
oh, I'm
sheet.
sorry. I'll apologize. It's not a public hearing on the hospital agenda. We're getting off to a little rocky start here tonight.
Okay, so this is my first time attending one of your meetings.
Okay.
I'd like to make a disclosure statement. I am a county planning commissioner, but I am here speaking on behalf of myself,
Okay.
okay?
And just state your name. I'm sorry. if
I'm
I-
sorry, Deborah Rose. Do I need to say an address or anything?
No, that'd be just fine.
Okay. So Craig Northorpe wrote in his article in today's press, quote, "What started more than 4 years ago as a conversation about cleaning up the medical corridor," end quote. What this project really appears to be is another opportunity to declare a certain area blighted in order to justify using government money in a corporate welfare scheme. Private industry advancement through using tax funds. The city shouldn't be using tax funds to expand a private industry or enterprise. Let the taxpayer money pay for the transportation infrastructure. Let the hospital pay for its own expansion. Let doctors or investors pay for medical office buildings. There's something rotten in the state of Denmark. A pot of money was allocated for urban renewal without any real plan. That money is now looking for a project, and that is an irresponsible approach. The city should not have a need and then find the funds for the need, not create funds and go looking for a need. There's an assumption, I'm sorry. I would like to, this is a statement that is probably better suited for the hospital board, but there's the northern part of the county and the prairie area are growing very rapidly. And I really think that the community would be better served if the hospital put satellite facilities out in the county. It certainly would help with the traffic congestion in town, and, probably fewer people would end up on the highway. I drove into town today on 95 and was going 23 miles an hour the whole length from down in the Hayden area. That's bad. In the Little Abner comic strips, there was a character, maybe some of you remember, named General Bull Moose. His motto was, quote, "What's good for General Bull Moose is good for the USA." This is the mindset here. There's an assumption that what is good for the hospital is good for CDA. But the hospital's self-interest will always take precedence over the needs of the city. So I'd like to just say that I oppose taxpayer funds for this project.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Did you say you're representing yourself or you're representing somebody else?
No, I'm representing myself. I'm
Oh,
the
okay.
county planning commissioner,
great.
but I don't want, anybody thinking that I'm speaking for the county.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Any commissioners have any comments they would like to make before I go to staff comments? No? Staff?
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, commissioners. So a couple of updates. So the Envision Coeur d'Alene project is moving along very smoothly. So that is our collaborative project between the city and CDA 2030 to update the comprehensive plan, the 20-year guide for growth, and then also to do the vision validation. So we had 2 pop-up game nights last week. We didn't have quite the attendance we were hoping for, so there's still another opportunity. So tomorrow evening at 5:30 at Lake City High School, we were going to be doing our third pop-up game night, and we hope for better attendance. It's really important that we have people play this board game to provide input on how we would like to grow as a city. And then we do still have additional opportunities. If people can pull together 10 or so people or more, ideally, we could do some additional facilitated games either during the day or on a weeknight, if that works with our schedules. We'd like to get all this done before Thanksgiving. Also on that project, just a reminder for commissioners that are serving on the CAC. So our chairman is part of the Community Advisory Committee, and then each of the commissioners are on the 6 focus groups. So we're going to be meeting December 4th and 5th when MIG is in town, and so that'll be a great kind of next step in the process. And then the December Planning Commission agenda, we currently have a special use permit request, and then there are 2 applications for planned unit developments and subdivisions kind of in conjunction. The third one we're reviewing to make sure that's complete before we definitely put that on the agenda. But those are the items that may be coming before you in December.
Okay,
That's it. Thank
Great.
you.
thanks. At this time, we're going to do the administrative item. It's the City and Ignite CDA regarding the Health Corridor District. So there'll be a little presentation, and I'm not sure if anyone has a conflict, but if they want to mention that, anything about being on the board.
No, this is Commissioner Mandel. I don't have any conflict of interest in the matters tonight or any financial interest, but I do want to let everybody know that I also serve on the Ignite CDA board.
Okay. Well, come on up, who's ever coming up to,
So Tony Burns
Okay.
with Ignite CDA, he'll be presenting, but I did want to mention you do have copies of this before you. So we received a copy of a resolution of support for the Health Corridor Urban Renewal District that came in from Kootenai Health Board of Trustees dated November 5th. And so they went through this resolution and basically moved to accept the draft resolution to support the Health Corridor Urban Renewal District. It was seconded and the motion passed unanimously. So this doesn't directly affect your role this evening, which is really finding that, excuse me, that the urban renewal plans for the health corridor are in conformance with the comprehensive plan, but just wanted you to be well aware of this since the item is going next week to City Council for a public hearing.
and our role is to make a recommendation to City Council.
Yes, you have findings to make on that.
Okay, thanks, Tony.
Good evening, Commissioners. So, I'd like to, just as Hillary said, just kind of give you an overview on the health corridor proposed urban renewal plan. Have a little PowerPoint to walk through, but would entertain any questions as they arise. First off, I'd like to give everybody a little background, kind of a memory refresh on Ignite CDA. We're the agency, or the city's redevelopment agency. We were formed in 1997. We have 3 districts: the Lake District, which was formed in 97 and sunsets in a couple of years in 2021. Our River District is established in 2003 and sunsets in 2027. And our Atlas District was formed last year and sunsets in 2038. So visually, this is our geographic world. This is our lake. This is our Lake District, and this light blue. The darker blue is the River District. The green is the Atlas District. And this pink area is the proposed health corridor urban renewal district. Our vision and mission: Ignite focuses on economic prosperity, quality housing, and employment opportunities. And our mission is to focus on healthy neighborhoods, a vibrant central city, strong regional economy, superior public open spaces, quality jobs, and housing. I'm happy to work for a wonderful 9-member volunteer board of commissioners. Chair is Scott Hoskins, and our vice chair is Olivia Metz. Brett Jordan, Mick Garman, Steve Whitmire, Jim Chapkus, Sarah Garcia, Dan English, and Brenda Mandel. You can see we have 2 council members on our board to provide alignment with the city. Our strategic priorities from now and into the future is education, housing, job creation, job retention, public space, public parking, Midtown Vitality, Downtown Vitality, the Stimson Mills Site Initiative, which you'll hear more about tonight, and the Health Corridor. So this is the proposed geographic area of the health corridor. It is bounded by I-90, basically on the north, and it does extend over into Appleway on the northern side. Bounded on the west by Northwest Boulevard, on the south by Davidson, on the east by Government Way. So process review to date. So back in 2017, Coeur d'Alene 2030, Kootenai Health, and Parkwood Properties invited the Urban Land Institute Technical Assistance Panel to Coeur d'Alene to kind of help understand, or to kind of help Kootenai Health and the stakeholders around the hospital campus understand how they could grow more effectively, or the challenge that they face growing effectively in that geographic area. The main recommendation from the ULI TAP process was for the community to consider forming an urban renewal district for that area, for that geographic area that I just showed you. So given that energy was passed on to City Council, and City Council authorized the production of a health corridor urban renewal eligibility report, which was conducted in 2018 by Panhandle Area Council. So per Idaho code, in order for an urban renewal district to be discussed, it has to be eligible for urban renewal. So that study was done and approved by City Council in 2018. So given the area that we just saw is eligible for urban renewal, City Council directed Ignite CDA to go ahead and form a master plan and urban renewal plan for that area, which was done by this September of 2019. We employed HDR Engineering to perform that analysis. So that brings us up to a little more up to date. So on October 9th, the Ignite CDA board approved the draft urban renewal plan that you have in your packet. And here we are tonight to see if the plan conforms with the city's comprehensive plan. So that's the process that's got us here to date. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
Mr. Burns, if I could, I just want to clarify with respect to the speaker that spoke just a little bit ago about, whether or not public funds should or shouldn't be used to foster private development and arguments along those lines and such. Just to clarify and understand, our decision tonight is a very narrow one, not whether investment is appropriate or use of public funds or any of this, but we're just merely looking at whether or not the plan is in conformance with the comp plan, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned,
Hold on, Tony.
Well, I just follow up on that. If a person does have some interest on how it's funded and so forth, because I think, John's right, I think that they have a misunderstanding. They can see you personally, or they can go to Ignite board meeting.
absolutely,
So there is a way for them to find out more.
yes.
Very good. Thank you.
So as part of the urban renewal planning process, we developed a master plan for the area and an economic feasibility study. So the long-term vision that came out of the planning effort was to create long-term public benefit. And this is to need us to focus on mobility improvements, infill densification, mixed-use development, neighborhood stabilization, and creation of new public space. And also to kind of plan for what to do about the Kootenai Health campus. Can it grow in place? What are the obstacles and challenges? So we think this long-term vision kind of aligns with the comprehensive plan's goals number 3, as I share on the slide. So we do see alignment with the plan. So why redevelopment? So the objective here is to take a proactive role in shaping the community, preserve and attract jobs, grow the tax base, attract private investment, and accommodate changing market conditions. So the goals of the plan, both the master plan and the urban renewal plan, we feel align with your goal number 2 for economic development. The plan identified barriers, challenges in the health corridor area. There's kind of obsolete buildings, parcelization, which means there's a lot of fractured ownership in that part of the world, limited road network, there's limited bike pedestrian infrastructure, and few amenities for the workers or residents. So once again, the plan identified these barriers and also comes up with ideas about how to address these barriers. And we think that, once again, that aligns with the comprehensive plan's economic environment goal number 2. Partnerships. The plan said it's key to have partnerships in this endeavor. So there's public-private partnerships with the public, working with the city, Ignite CDA, Kootenai, Kootenai Health must work with the private stakeholders, like we've done in our other districts, to create value in that area. And we're all on the same page to make this health corridor work. So we think that aligns with your goal number 4 for administrative environment. The comprehensive plan advocates efficiency and quality of management. So we're all pulling on the same rope, so to speak, here. There was a lot of public input associated with this project. We had scoping meetings in May. We had stakeholder interviews and visioning workshop in June. And we had a 3-day design charrette in July, which was well attended. We got tons of input from the public, both folks that live and work within that geographic area and people from beyond that geographic area. It was well conducted by the HCR consulting team. And we think that helps align with Objective 4.01 on the comprehensive plan. So all of this input from the public and all the input from our paid professionals that we brought here that bring, creative ideas from across the country and across the world came up with this long-term vision that you see in front of you. Now, this is a long-term vision. I've underlined the long-term because this is a 30 to 50-year vision for this area. There's a lot to be done up here, but it's going to take time to do. It's going to take time to materialize. As you know, under urban Idaho statutes, urban renewal districts only last for 20 years. So we have a plan for the first 20 years of this long-term vision to kind of get this effort off the ground and set the table for future development. And part of that plan involves these following elements: mixed use and open space. We're going to create mixed use opportunities here, which are, mixed use is commercial, residential, retail opportunities, along with new public space that you saw in this graphic up here. These green areas show these new public spaces that are envisioned to be created over time. We think this aligns with Objective 1.09 under the comprehensive plan. The plan also calls for densification and placemaking. So in order for this to work, we need to densify up there, which means to put more commercial and residential uses on that area. And I know you've all been up to the Kootenai County campus area in that geographic area. There's a lot of underutilized space up there, a lot of surface parking, a lot of dilapidated structures, so there's opportunities to densify and also to do some placemaking. Once again, we think this aligns with the comprehensive plan under Objective 1.11. Mobility improvements. I challenge anyone up there on the dais to say they haven't experienced mobility challenges in that campus area. There's very few networks, road networks that align very well. We see a lot of opportunity to better align the mobility improvements both from traffic and for pedestrians and bicycles. Once again, we think this aligns with Objective 1.16 on the plan. Keys to implementation. So in order to make this work, we need to respond to market demand, partnership with the hospital, partnerships with private development, focus on parking because there's going to be need for more structured parking in that area as you densify, and early project successes. Once again, we think this aligns with the plan under Objective 2.02. A lot of people came together on this project. This is just a list of some of the folks that were representing major entities in the community, but there's a lot of other stakeholders that contributed to this process. We think we came up with a good product. We think we have a good strategic plan, and we think we have a good urban renewal plan, and we think we have a lot of stakeholders on board to partner with us to bring this to fruition. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have that we haven't talked about.
Go ahead.
The little, on the northwest portion of the district, across from 95, or 90, or it isn't there? At the groups that I saw, that part of the district goes across, back, right, stop.
Stop.
One more.
One more?
There,
So
I thought there was a colored area
where am I at here? Yep, how about that?
there. That area there in the northwest, that's across from
Interstate.
90, isn't it?
Yes. So these areas were included because of their opportunity for redevelopment and also the plan to one day put an overpass over I-90 that will connect the Health Corridor campus area with Appleway.
So it would be helpful if that part was in your district when you put that overpass in there.
Yes, plus there's opportunities for redevelopment, and these parcels up here are underutilized, so that's why they were included for possible kind of reconfiguration over the coming years.
Very good, thank you.
This is more a staff question. I know we have to make our findings with the current comp plan, and as Tony mentioned, this is a very long, 20-year, if not longer, plan. How does that tie in since we're in the process of updating our current comp plan, how does that tie in with when we do change our comp plan for something that might come up 10 years from now or 6 years from now? How would that all play into this if we have a new comp plan at that time?
I envision it how we have the education corridor in our current comprehensive plan. So one of the things we want to do in updating the comprehensive plan is to show different areas of economic development, different business districts, places like that. So I think it'd be really important for us to recognize the health corridor in the comprehensive plan. It doesn't have to have all of the information from the urban renewal plan in it, but to acknowledge and to support economic development efforts in that area and creating more jobs in our community. I think those are the things we need to focus on. So this would just be a supplemental document, all the effort that's been done with the urban renewal plan that could be referred to in the comprehensive plan, but if there's changes, it wouldn't directly affect our plan.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
I think, Mr. Chairman, in the earlier part, though, it'll be great when we develop the plan because of the problems that they have here now. Misalignment of this and that, and can't walk and so forth. That's just highlights to us that what our comprehensive plan has to deal with in the future. Not necessarily this area, but the city.
Right.
So this is the first input to our comprehensive plan right here.
Sure. Tony, I have a question or two. I read through the report as much as I could because it's a lot of pages. But a couple of the items, in the report, it was, a little bit of eminent domain, and those words came up. And I know at some of the public workshops that I attended, that came up. Some of the properties being mentioned as dilapidated and things like that. On those two issues, how do you address the concerns, and I know this isn't a public hearing, but just to get it on record, address those issues for eminent domain, because there's residential pieces of property, and there's a lot of verbiage in here on acquiring properties and things like that. So I imagine the general public, not so much the hospital or commercial pieces of property, are majorly concerned about, selling a building or two. But just for the sake of the people who are watching this that can hear what the comments might be on those items for
Sure.
Private residents in that area.
Sure, so just to touch briefly on eminent domain and condemnation, so the agency does have that authority under Idaho statute. We've never used that, we've never had to use that in our past districts, especially in our Lake District, where we bought probably over 30 properties over the years, voluntarily working with landowners with strategic intent to build parking garages, to do education corridors, to do memorial parks, things like that. So we have that tool, we've never used it, and the board has never intended to use that, but it does exist. So as you look at this screen here, you'll notice that these areas down here call for neighborhood stabilization. You don't really see much going on in these neighborhoods. The consultants in the community said, let's just kind of leave that healthy neighborhood alone, keep it vibrant and active and contributing to this area. So we don't really see any, in this long-term vision, any action really occurring in those neighborhoods other than enhancing the street environments, maybe traffic calming, pedestrian right-of-ways, things like that. So there's really no redevelopment plan for these areas that you see on the screen here. There might be some areas over here that skirt the Emma area, but this is all kind of north of Emma.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
And that was by design and on purpose, to kind of leave the mature neighborhoods alone in this.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions for Tony? Any comments?
Perhaps for the audience, a clarification, Kootenai Health is actually a public hospital, is that correct, Tony?
Yes, it's a public entity.
Thank you.
Okay. Don't anything else for us?
No?
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right, I appreciate it. Thank
You got a
you.
busy agenda.
Thank you. At this time, I'll bring it over to the commissioners for discussion.
I'd say this, Kootenai Health is truly a regional facility. It serves folks from north of Bonners Ferry all the way south of Cottonwood. This community used to be one of a resource-based economy of lumber mills everywhere, and we're seeing the lumber mills are long gone. The jobs used to be in resource economy. Now it's all about services. Tourism is an important part of our economy, and I think the other big strength we have to offer ourselves and others is healthcare. And I think Mr. Burns touched well on the various elements of the comp plan that is supported. And I think he's made that case very, very well, especially with respect to jobs and economics. And I think it's very important that we protect this asset and expand it. It's really part of our region's economic viability. And, for all of us that live here, when we look at various magazines and every year on, the websites and whatnot, they post the best places to live in the country. And every one of those entities that rates different cities and whatnot, healthcare is a key one of those elements. And I think we're darn fortunate, every one of us that live here, to have quality healthcare and the kind of services that are available. It wasn't that long ago that we didn't have heart services here. You had to go to Spokane. You didn't have cancer services. You had to go to Spokane. You didn't have a NICU. You had to go to Spokane, et cetera, et cetera. So, if this isn't supported by the comp plan, I don't know what is.
Any other comments before I ask for a motion and the findings?
Well, I'd just like to comment that it's been a very public process. And I think that you get a lot of input that way. And I'm encouraged by this. And then the one that's coming up later on, of getting the public involved. And it is a public hospital, as you said, and that's significant. And I think it fits well with our comp plan.
This time I'll ask for a motion from someone.
So I would motion that the urban renewal plan for the health corridor urban renewal project as presented tonight by Mr. Burns of Ignite CDA be supported, that we make the finding that the proposed plan is supported by the comp plan, specifically with recognizing the references that Mr. Burns made in his presentation to the very specific elements. I believe those are all well supported, and we adopt that as our findings, and especially with respect to the connection to the economics, the managed growth, and the transportation improvement aspects of this. And with that, I would motion that we conclude that the urban renewal plan for the health corridor urban renewal project is in conformity with the comprehensive plan, and we forward that recommendation to the city council.
And I'd say that's based on all the goals that we have listed in our, and we don't have to list them, but in our package.
Yes, and specifically, and as reference to Mr. Burns's specific connections as well.
Presentation that you did. Okay, great. I have a first by Ingles, looking for a second by Ward. Can I have a roll call? Shannon, please?
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Lutrip,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Rumpler,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay. Tony, congratulations, and move forward to city council, and we'll see how this goes in the next 20 years. Thank you very much. I've noticed a few people have come in. We're going to have our next hearing, and I didn't know if anyone that came in that did not have an opportunity to sign up on the sign-up sheet for item number S4-19, you can, and I'll get those sheets, and I'll call you up when it's time for you to speak. Right now, we're going to have Mike give us a presentation on applicant is the Active West LLC for a 23-lot plan unit development commercial lot known as the Union.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for item S-4-19, application by Active West LLC requesting approval of a 24-lot preliminary plat to be known as the Union. Property is located immediately east of the intersection of BB Boulevard and Centennial Trail. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on October 26, 2019, and all of the required notifications have been made. Here's a location map of the property. It's highlighted here in red. This is Northwest Boulevard, Highway 95 crossing the river, the Spokane River, and then BB Boulevard. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. See BB Boulevard's here. The property's highlighted here in red. There's another bird's eye view looking west of the property. It's highlighted here in white. Here's Lakewood Drive, and then BB Boulevard, and then the river. This came through as a PUD on October 9th, 2019, in item PUD 3-19, and all the setbacks, lot widths, and modifications were made at that time and approved on October 8th, 2019. So today's findings will be based on the subdivision requirements off of findings B7A through B7D, and we'll go through each and every one of these individually, starting with B7A. That all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested by the city engineer. The city engineer has indicated the preliminary plat submitted contains all the general preliminary plat elements required by the municipal code. Once again, please note, the Planning Commission approved the deviations to the subdivision code through the approval of the plan unit development for this project in item PUD 3-19. Requested deviations from the subdivision code include reduction of required street width and a sidewalk on only one side of the street. The applicant has submitted the preliminary plat that has shows the west half of the property and the lot dimensions, and then the east half with the lot dimensions. The next finding is finding B87, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. This application has been routed through the city departments for their review. The city engineer has indicated that the proposed street will need to be constructed to city standards with exception of width as approved in the PUD. On-street parking has been proposed for the residential area based on comments received from the public hearing during the PUD presentation to the Planning Commission. At that time, the city engineer expressed concerns of widening the street to accommodate on-street parking due to the potential of higher speeds. Mitigation measures such as curb extensions and raised sidewalks have been proposed. The applicant has submitted an infrastructure and utility plan that indicates how the project is to be constructed, and the applicant is, from the comments, has widened the streets along the residential lots in this area here, so there'll be on-street parking for the residential area. There's also been some areas to slow down the traffic here, and the design of the connection to Lakewood Drive and the extension to the east. So as I said, this application has been routed through the other departments, and each department has indicated there are adequate facilities and utilities available to serve the proposed request. The full list of staff comments are on page 5, 6, and 7 of your staff report. The next finding is B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards and all of the subdivision improvement standards. Per engineering review, the for the purposes of the preliminary plat, both the subdivision design standards and the improvement standards have been vetted for compliance. The last finding is finding B7D. The lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. This zoning district is Zone C17, and the applicant requested to go through the plan unit development process in order to develop this property. The lots in the proposed preliminary plat meet the minimum requirements that were approved in the PUD. Setbacks for future buildings are tied to the setbacks that were approved in that PUD process. The proposed subdivision is in conformance with the requested modifications that were approved in the PUD. There are 7 recommendations at the end of your staff report. There are 2 from planning, 2 from water, 3 from the wastewater department. And the planning commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation.
Any questions, Mike, at this time? No? Okay. Oh, Peter.
In our packet, we received a letter from Ann Miller had some comments on this. Do you want to comment on that, or?
I think one of her comments was based on the setbacks, is that correct?
Well, yeah, there was just a series of things.
Most of those comments were needed to be addressed during the PUD process, and I think you guys heard those concerns at that time and addressed those concerns at that time.
And so that is matters behind us. We listened to their testimony, we listened to others' testimony, we made our decision.
That is correct.
And now this next step is here, does not pertain to any of the items that was raised in that memo that had already been addressed at the previous meeting.
That is correct.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And the applicant is here, I take it? Dennis, come on up. State your name and I'll swear you in, Dennis.
Dennis Cunningham, Active West.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
Well, brief presentation. Last month, we were here on the PUD. We worked with staff over the last 3 weeks to come up with the Lakewood connection. It was a tight parcel in there. We had some topography, some utilities, and we worked with staff to work that out. We also listened to Chairman Messina's comment as well as the others, and went through the design with the engineer and actually added then parking on the sidewalk side of that street. I think that added 23 additional spaces. So that would be 1 per unit if everybody had a visitor. There's still 2 in the driveway. The concern from staff, and you just heard from Mike, was that we wanted to keep circulation at a calming measure. And so there were a couple designs that we implemented with staff to calm the road down. That's why really we didn't want to widen it. But as you know, a wider road is more cost to us and impacts the lot, usable lot area. But we went ahead and looked at some of those designs and thought it would outweigh not having parking at all. Other than that, I can answer, some of the questions that might have been raised. But as I think Mike mentioned, we were trying to address a lot of those at the PUD process.
Okay. Any questions of Dennis at this? No? Okay, good enough. Thanks, Dennis, for your input.
You guys are getting easy.
Thank you, yeah. I have a number of people that signed up. First, Toby Sheldon does not wish to speak. And if you change your mind, please just come on up to the podium. Kevin Bowman did not wish to speak. Dallas Thompson did not wish to speak. Wayne Passo did not indicate whether he'd want to speak or not. Kirsten Lindstrom did not wish to speak. Tony Vellecci, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name, did not wish to speak. Jim Van Sky did not wish to speak. Teresa Van Sky did not wish to speak. And Brian Donlin did not indicate whether you wanted to speak or not. And that's everyone I have on my list. Okay, well, Dennis, I take it you don't have to add anything else if you don't want to. So at this time, I'm going to close the public testimony on this particular hearing and bring it to the commissioners to have a discussion and a motion.
I'm prepared to make a motion if there's no discussion.
Go right ahead.
This matter having come before the planning commission on November 12th, 2019, and there being present a person requesting approval of item S419, a request for 24 lots and one tract preliminary plat request for the Union. The applicant is Active West LLC. The location is 3.6 acres located immediately east of the intersection of Beebe Boulevard and Centennial Trail. I would urge adoption for justification, B1, item B1 through B6. B7 pursuant to section 1610-0308, preliminary plats, in order to approve a preliminary plat, the planning commission must make the following findings. B7A, that all the preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer or his designee. This is based on the staff report. B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities and utilities are adequate. This is also based on the staff report. B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all the subdivision design standards contained in chapter 16.15 and all the subdivision improvement standards contained in chapter 16.40 requirements. This is based, again, also on the staff report. And B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning code. This is based on the staff report, noting that the prior PUD requirement had a significant number of deviations that were cited in that previous finding. In conclusion decision, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds the request of Active West LLC for a preliminary plat of approval, as described in the application, should be approved. Special conditions applied to the motion are planning, water, and wastewater. They're identified. Do you need me to read them? Is it required? There are some special conditions applied to the motion, planning, water, and wastewater. And with that, I'll leave it for vote.
Appreciate it. We have a first, looking for a second.
Second.
I have a second. Can we have a roll call, Shannon, please?
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip,
Yes.
Rumpler,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay. Item number S-4-19 passes. Okay. Moving on to our last item. The subject is the Atlas Waterfront PUD and subdivision. And Tammy's going to give us a presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Messina and Commissioners. Let's get started. So this evening, we have a request for a PUD and subdivision. The applicant is City of Coeur d'Alene, and the project engineer is Phil Boyd. So we have two requests this evening: the plan unit development that allows primarily single-family dwellings, townhomes with limited commercial and multifamily. In addition, 25 acres of open space, including 12 acres of public open space along the Spokane River waterfront is proposed, and a 415-lot preliminary plat to be known as Atlas Waterfront First Edition. Property is located at 3074 Celtice Way, and the legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on October 20th, 2019. And this is a location map of the subject property outlined in the red. And this is the Riverstone development here, Belle Reve along the waterfront, and the property owned by Lance Douglas, located here along Celtice Way. This is another aerial photo showing a little closer up of the subject property. Again, this is Celtice Way with the new roundabout. So as far as a little bit of history on the property, in 2018, the city of Coeur d'Alene, in collaboration with Ignite Coeur d'Alene, purchased the Atlas Mill site, which had operated for more than 100 years. It closed in 2005. The former mill site was annexed into the city in 2017 with the C-17 zone. And in 2017 and 18, the mill site was master planned to determine the financial feasibility of the property, being included in an urban renewal district, and considerable public input was solicited for the public spaces. The intent of the city and Ignite Coeur d'Alene is to transfer the blocks of development in phases over the next couple of years as site development efforts progress instead of selling the property all at once. So as noted in the application, the project was intended to create a unique and desirable neighborhood with significant waterfront open space. So the city acquired the parcel to achieve two objectives: preserve the waterfront for the community and stimulate private investment on a former mill site that has been vacant for more than 10 years. And this is a drone photo that's looking east. So the subject property is located west of Riverstone and south of Celtice Way, flanking the north bank of the Spokane River. And as I mentioned, River's Edge development is bordering the property on the west, and the 60.9 acre site is currently vacant and undeveloped. So the two items tonight is a decision on the plan unit development and the subdivision request. So there will only be one public hearing, and the Planning Commission must make separate findings for each of the requests. So before I begin going through the required findings, I'll explain a little bit about the PUD request. So the PUD proposed for the Atlas Waterfront project includes deviations that are noted in the deviation table, and those are on pages 5 through 8 in your staff report. There's been a number of workshops with the Planning Commission to discuss these deviation requests as well as the standards that are going to go along with this, if it's approved. So I'll briefly go through the deviations. It would be for maximum height, minimum lot size, setback requirements for single-family, duplex, for the townhomes, minimum yard requirements, fence heights, and there is one deviation for the parking requirement, and I'll get into more detail when we go through the presentation. So on November 6, 2019, there was a special call meeting with the Planning Commission, and they provided input to the project design team and recommended some changes to the Atlas Waterfront Neighborhood Development Standards. And I believe those have been updated, and the changes are reflected in the Neighborhood Development Standards dated November 7th, 2019. There are 7 findings for the PUD request tonight, finding B8A through B8G that I'll go through for this request. Finding B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The subject property is outlined here, and the comprehensive plan designates this area as the Spokane River District. Spokane River District area tomorrow states that the scale of development will be urban in nature, promoting multimodal connectivity to downtown. That the overall density may approach 10 to 16 dwelling units per acre, but pockets of denser housing are appropriate and encouraged. And that open space parks and pedestrian and bicycle connections and other public spaces will be provided throughout, especially adjacent to the Spokane River. Your staff report does include the comprehensive plans and objectives, and I will read a few of them. Objective 1.04 waterfront development, Objective 1.05 vistas, Objective 1.11 community design, Objective 1.12 also community design, Objective 1.09 parks, Objective 1.14 efficiency, Objective 1.16 connectivity, and again, they're all included in your staff report. Additionally, the comprehensive plan designates this area as a special area, and it talks about public access to and enhancement of our shorelines is a priority. Shorelines are a positive feature for the community, and they must be protected. Comprehensive plan shoreline policies state make public access to the river and lake shorelines a priority. Finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. Turn the page here. So to the south of the subject property, the subject property to the south is adjacent to the Spokane River on its southern boundary. The Spokane River is primarily used for recreational activities and has the navigable water zoning district designation. To the north, the subject property is adjacent to Celtice Way on its northern boundary. Celtice Way is an arterial road that has been recently rebuilt as a complete street. The site plan does indicate that there will be 2 access points on Celtice Way. To the east of the subject property is the Riverstone and Bella Reef subdivisions, as well as Centennial Trail and an existing dog park. Uses within Riverstone include multifamily apartments, a retirement community, single-family dwellings, restaurants, and a mixed-use village with retail uses and other commercial and professional offices. And to the west of the subject property is a site currently owned by Lance Douglas of approximately 22 acres and is currently vacant. The PUD and preliminary plat was recently approved to allow a 250-unit apartment facility, a mini storage facility, and a private gated residential community for the 29-lot preliminary plat to be known as River's Edge. This is an illustrative PUD site plan. And as you can see, there's some parks located here, and then the waterfront park along the river. And the pink indicates where there could be commercial uses, and then the residential uses. The land use map indicates that this property is currently vacant, as well as the property on the west. And I'll also mention that this portion here, the triangular piece, is not part of the project. It is also owned by Lance Douglas. There are multiple uses within the Riverstone development to the east. We have multifamily uses, single-family, and commercial uses. And this is a site photo of the subject property, which is a view of the northeast portion of the property looking southeast toward the Spokane River. Riverstone and Centennial Trail are visible on the left side of that photo, which is right about here. This is a view from the north central part of the property looking south toward the river. There are piles of dirt and rock from the Atlas Mill cleanup effort that are still visible. And this is a view from the center portion of the property looking north toward Celtice Way and the future roundabout at Atlas. Dirt and rock piles from the Atlas Mill cleanup are also visible in this photo. And this is a view from the center of the property looking northwest toward Celtice Way. And this is a view from the central portion of the property looking south toward the river and the city-owned former railroad right-of-way. This is a view of the west portion of the subject property looking southwest toward the adjacent property. The city-owned former railroad right-of-way is also visible. And this is a view from the central portion of the property looking southeast. There are dirt piles from the mill cleanup, the city-owned former railroad right-of-way property, and the river are also visible. And this is a view from the southern edge of the property looking east along the city-owned former railroad right-of-way. And a view from the southern edge of the property looking southeast at the natural inlet along the Spokane River. This is a phasing plan showing that there are proposing 4 phases in this illustrative plan. So the project will be developed in phases as shown, and they are looking at an 8 to 10 year schedule depending on market conditions. The property will be sold by Ignite Coeur d'Alene, the Urban Renewal District, through a request for proposals process in partnership with the City of Coeur d'Alene. So this would be the first phase, outlined in the green. The second phase larger portion the third phase, and the fourth phase. This is the development area's key plan, and it notes the area of development on the Atlas Mill property, Atlas Mill site property, and the standards that apply for each of those areas include building types, use, lot width, depth, and area for the proposed townhomes and duplexes, setbacks, building heights, and showing different ways that the buildings and the lots can be configured to meet the design intent and the development standards. And this graphic shows the frontage types. The Atlas Waterfront PUD includes 3 different frontage types: residential fronting riverfront drive, which are rear-loaded, residential fronting interior streets, which are rear-loaded, and residential fronting interior streets, which are front-loaded, and additional frontage options that are based upon the lot circumstances and noted in the development standards. And there are about 8 slides I'll quickly go through showing the building types. So this would be a front-loaded duplex and single-family home. Alley-loaded single-family homes. Alley-loaded townhomes and duplexes. Multifamily residential. Typical alley-loaded duplexes and townhomes. And multifamily and commercial. Commercial office. And office mixed use. And we have also included the view corridor map, and this is Saltese Way. And here would be the view corridors along the interior streets, and again from Saltese Way. And it's noted in our comp plan objectives having views and vistas. Finding B8C, that the proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. Physical characteristics. The subject property is higher along Saltese Way and slopes downward toward the Spokane River to the south. The pre-existing grade had an approximately 45-foot elevation drop on the subject site. Some grading work has been done to prepare the site for development. There are no topography or topographical or other physical constraints that would make the subject property unsuitable for the proposed PUD request at this time. And this is the topographic map. And Saltese Way is along this area, and the Spokane River is here. And this is the upland development concept. So in addition to the sidewalks, here are additional areas that folks could walk along to have pedestrian access through the development. Finding B8D, the location, size, and design of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing public facilities and services. City staff from engineering, streets, water, fire, parks, and wastewater departments have reviewed the application request in regards to the public utilities and facilities. And each department has indicated that there are adequate public facilities and public utilities that are available to serve the proposed request. And those comments are included in your staff report on pages 33 through 37 of the staff report. As far as streets and traffic, Saltese Way is a principal arterial road, and Saltese Way is a newly constructed street section that was designed to handle the development potential of the site and surrounding properties. Finding B8E, that the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space as determined by the Planning Commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, and parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. So the proposed development does include a 25 acres of open space, which is approximately 39% of the open space that can be accessed by the public. The project includes 12 acres of open space along the waterfront to include a waterfront park, and upland open spaces to provide pedestrian circulation routes in addition to the sidewalks. The waterfront park provides a grass open play area, playground, picnic shelter, food truck parking, separate pedestrian and bicycle waterfront trails, a water dog park, ADA accessible swim area and kayak launch, and several other water access points. The very northeast area of the site is a 7.7 acre public space that will be used as determined by the City Parks and Recreation Department. And this is the open space plan map, and this shows the green area, which is the open space areas. And within each of the 4 phases, there will be a certain percentage of open space included as it's developed, with a total of 39% open space throughout the development. This is a landscaping and public open space plan. And you can see the trees along the street frontages and along Saltese Way and the streets along here. And this is a landscaping and open space plan of the waterfront portion of the development. And Phil can provide more detail if you have more questions about that. And this also provides the open space details. As I mentioned, phases 1 through 4 all include a percentage of open space with a total of 39% open space throughout the development. Finding B8F, off-street parking does or does not provide parking sufficient for users of the development. The proposed parking is consistent with the city code requirements, with the exception of one requested deviation for the commercial restaurant use, which is primary food sales on and off-site consumption for over 1,000 square feet. So one paved off-street space per 250 gross square feet allow up to 50% of the required parking to be provided off-street. And this is the concept parking plan. So the purple areas is the on-street parking throughout the development that the request is for. And the green indicates the waterfront parking, and that is 130 total parking stalls here. And the Atlas Bluff parking lot is proposing to have 32 spaces. So there's a total of 395 parking spaces throughout the development if you include the on-street parking. Finding B8G, that the proposal does or does not provide for an acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common property. So the common privately owned property will be maintained by a master association controlled by City and Ignite CDA until such time that the Ignite CDA district sunsets and or the private land ownership exceeds 80% for the sale land area, at which time the private property owners will assume control of the master association. And the City Ignite CDA will have the ability at their sole discretion to transfer the master association control to a private party if they determine it is in the best interest of the city and Ignite Coeur d'Alene. Now I'll go on to the request for the preliminary plat for item S319. So there are 4 findings for the subdivision request. Finding B7A, that all of the general public preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested to by the city engineer. City engineer has indicated that the preliminary plat submitted contains all of the general preliminary plat elements required by the municipal code. And in your staff report on page 32, you'll see the preliminary plat for Atlas Waterfront First Edition. So finding B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. City staff has indicated that there are adequate public services and facilities available. Staff has recommended 15 conditions as part of the PUD and subdivision request. And see pages 33 through 36 for the full comments of those. Finding B7B, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision and improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40 requirements. Both the subdivision and design standards and improvement standards have been vetted for compliance. Because the proposed development is a city-initiated PUD, city staff were involved in the creation of the design standards for the development. Streets and Engineering has no objection to the preliminary plat, and modifications and modifications of subdivision improvement standards through the PUD. And there is the preliminary plat. Finding B7D, that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. So the project includes a request to modify the required zoning standards through the PUD process as noted in the deviation table for the proposed residential and commercial uses. Staff has vetted the request and determined it is appropriate. And this is the existing zoning map, and as you can see, the outline of the property for the proposed PUD and preliminary plat is zoned commercial, with commercial to the north and to the west and to the east, with a small area of waterfront that's zoned R12, which is residential. So there are 15 recommended conditions as noted in your staff report. And the decision point this evening, there are two requests: the plan unit development to allow primarily single-family dwellings, townhomes with limited commercial and multifamily. And in addition, there would be 25 acres of public open space, including 12 acres of public open space along the Spokane River waterfront. And item S219 is a 415-lot preliminary plat to be known as Atlas Waterfront. So the Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make separate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice.
Questions of Tammy?
I have a question. Can we back up to page 36 of the staff report?
Sure.
The fire department said that there is a need for a plus or minus 1 acre lot close to Celtice for Coeur d'Alene Fire Department's future fire station number 5. I think that it behooves us to at least identify that as a need off either the circle. So we've got area 9, 10, or 11 that are available for instant on Celtice access. I think that we need to make that as part of this. I don't think we can just gloss over it and hope it'll happen.
Okay,
So-
Hillary may be able to add to that. I believe there was some additional staff discussion with the fire department on that.
Yes, I'd be happy to speak to that. So there is a need for a future fire station, and that was discussed with Chief Gabriel and our city administrator. The challenge, it'd be great if we could fit it in the project, and I think it is an appropriate use. The challenge is the city is trying to pay ourselves back for purchasing this. And so looking through the pro forma, every dollar amount counts for trying to figure out that balance out. And so that's why it's in here as kind of more of a commentary to make sure that the public is aware, commissioners and council are aware of that need. I don't know, we'll have to see how the project builds out to see if it will be able to be on this site. If not, as long as all of us are aware for future opportunities, if there's other sites along Celtice in the vicinity, it'd be great to get a future fire station.
In Texas, the developers paid for the fire stations and the schools. Great schools, by the way. Yeah, but I think we oughtn't to lose track of that because we are compressing our density right there. And we are across from fire source trees. So I think we really want to keep that on our radar. Thanks.
I see, and I'm sorry if I should know this, but I don't, but there's a, in special condition number 5, reference to the city's one lot, one lateral rule. When will that rule come into play as far as documentation from applicants and the process? What is that and how will we make sure it's being complied with?
So Mike Becker with wastewater is here, and he could probably speak to that.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. The one lot, one lateral rule was actually devised as a method of understanding where a person discharges their sewer into the public system. That rule takes place when typically we have a subdivision to make sure that every lot has its own assigned lateral. There's no sharing of laterals. That way, property owner A is not responsible for backing up into property owner B's residence. So with that, we have worked closely with Welch Comer engineers on that, and we have a conceptual design of how that's going to still be accomplished. through the subdivision process.
Okay.
So I know that's an interesting question when we don't know how many lots we're actually going to be working with at the time, and there could be some changes, but that's part of the dynamic process that the wastewater utility employs working with developers.
Okay, so that will fall under the wastewater team's review of any of the
Yes, ma'am.
projects. Okay, thank you.
All right, John?
Question, Tammy. And Hillary pointed out on the, making the pro forma, and this is a unique project where the city of Coeur d'Alene is the applicant. That's a little unusual of a development of this size and magnitude for the city of Coeur d'Alene to be the applicant. And we're going to see, and we have seen in the exhibits, a very, very generous amount of open space, very generous amount of public open space. 100% of the waterfront is public. Accessible, 25 acres of public open space, 100% of its of the waterfront is public. That's all great stuff. But as Hillary points out, it has to be paid for. So we have to have some density here to sell off, if you will, to pay for folks like me to go down there with my kayak and push it into the water and have a great day. So back to the comp plan, you made the point that speaking density, we got a lot of positives here. The open space, 35% open, 39% open space, but we got to pay for that. So, at what density do we have to pay for that? And I think, as I understood you to say, the comp plan says that it anticipates, I'm reading from it actually, 10 to 16 dwelling units per acre, but it goes on to say pockets of higher density housing would be appropriate and encouraged. I was trying to dig through the staff report while you were doing your great presentation, and I thought I saw somewhere when I studied this packet at home that the overall gross density per acre is somewhere around 11. Is that right?
That's correct.
So the comp plan says, we would expect 10 to 16 and even higher than that in some areas. And so even with all that open space, we're able to keep the density at a pretty reasonable level. 11 is the right number?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Phil, you want to? Phil, just state your name, and for the record, I'll swear you in.
Okay. Okay. Phil Boyd on behalf of the city of Coeur d'Alene. Welch
Do you
Comer-
swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. So tonight I am going to present the PUD and subdivision to you. You've seen a lot of this before, but we're going to get into some detail in order to substantiate the record and provide plenty of information for the commissioners and the public. This is the site overview that you guys have seen evolve over time, some of it with your input. And tonight, the way I'm going to walk you through that is first talk about the whole objective of my presentation is to demonstrate that the development satisfies the PUD requirements and the subdivision requirements. I'm first going to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. Commissioner Mandel mentioned that at our last workshop that might be useful, so I'm going to present a little bit of that. Talk about the criteria, how we're satisfying the PUD criteria, also the subdivision requirements, and then Q&A. And Chairman Messina, I'm glad to take questions as we move along.
Okay.
So as Tammy had mentioned in her presentation, when the city of Coeur d'Alene started down this path, there were really the two primary objectives is preserve the waterfront for the public and stimulate private development investment. And by solving some of the problems with that site, because I think as we all know, there's a tremendous number of challenges with that site. So the city initiated the purchase of the property. Ignite completed a preliminary master plan, and we developed a financial feasibility study off of that. And the short story on the financial feasibility study is when you go in and look at a parcel of property that's going to be served by the URA, it has to pencil for the URA to be involved with it, meaning you have to be in the black. You can't work on deficit spending in URA. Through a number of iterations, 25 in fact, with the financial feasibility model, we were able to develop a plan that has high density, as Commissioner Ingalls mentioned, but that allowed us to preserve the waterfront. And so the urban renewal districts were formed just about a year ago, last year. At that point, the project broke into two phases. One was the public waterfront. And the mayor was really championing the idea of getting the public waterfront project moving forward very quickly so the public can enjoy the space that the city has purchased. The other value in completing that work up front is now developers see that this project is real. Because remember, there's the sales side of the project as well, which is the other side, and we call it the upland development process. Moving through the entitlements and eventually moving to a land sales through an RFP process. So I'll talk a little bit about the land disposition process. There's three key elements to it: development standards, the master plat and the PUD, and then the sales process itself. The development standards, which were in your packet, and I have here electronically if we need to refer to them as well, really defined how we're going to create a unique neighborhood. And that was one of the things we heard from the public early on. It also establishes land use options for developers to look at and say, gosh, if I'm interested in buying this particular area, what can I do there? It also establishes development character and quality. Because if I'm the first guy in the door to buy something, I want to know that the second gal in the door is going to produce something that is equivalent quality and not diminish what I have done. And then also provide Ignite, a CDA, an evaluation tool to vet different developers. How closely do you match our development standards? So that was the first element. The second element is the master plat and the PUD. We're trying to do the heavy lifting for the developers and builders, so when they come in to buy an area, they have the development standards in one hand, they have a plat and PUD in the other hand, and they have certainty. And in the development world, certainty is a positive thing. So we're trying to tee it up for them so they can move forward. And then finally, the RFP process. Ignite has the ability to sell property through a request for proposals. So if this is approved, Ignite will move forward with soliciting requests for proposals. Developers will get the development standards and an RFP. There's a ranking criteria. It's not solely based on price. And I'll allude to this a little later in the presentation, that one of the community values we heard come forward is, let's just not rush out and sell this property to the person who's going to bring us the highest dollar value. As Hillary noted, it's an important consideration for the city because they want to pay back their wastewater fund, but it's not the only consideration. Again, you guys have seen this picture before. This shows one of the fundamental design principles when we started early on in the project is views. And really down to the traffic part of it. When you come into here, you're looking down to the river. If you come through here, you're looking at the river. If you come through Suzanne, you're looking out at the park. And then making sure these nodes on the waterfront were really featured view corridors. Here again, you can kind of see there's this entire waterfront street here, has a very nice view shed. There's no parking on that south side in the current plan. That has the potential to change depending on what happens with one of the deviations later. So hopefully we won't obscure the view. And then, of course, the view corridors, the way that the blocks are laid out here is intended to promote those views down to the river. So you don't get here at the very get-go. It starts really early. And 2030, the city of Coeur d'Alene, Hillary, and Nicole from 2030, Kiki, Councilwoman Miller, did a really great visioning workshop in this very room on February 7th. And it was really fascinating, the takeaways from that. You know, some of them you were not too surprised about. We'll take pedestrian and bike access. We love that. Yeah, we want a natural and unique identity to the neighborhood. But this third one, which was really interesting, is the acceptable trade-off of we'll take higher density. Now, this is the community voting on these things. We'll take higher density in exchange for water access and reserving, that waterfront property area there. Another key element that came out of that is this idea of let's preserve a piece of this property for a potential job creator. And that has been in the back of our mind, and you'll see it in as I move through the presentation. Are there opportunities that maybe when we get an RFP in, depending on who that potential user of that area is, perhaps we'll wheel and deal more in order to get a job creator in there. Because remember, it's not all about price. So the challenges with the site, when you go in and you take out 13 acres on the waterfront, which is the most valuable piece of property, then you have this area up here that has been called Mount Hink, and now we're calling it Atlas Bluff, because that's apparently more appropriate. There's portions of it here that are just really, really expensive to remediate. The unsuitable soils go down to a depth of 40 to 60 feet in there. So to remediate that site would be very expensive. On the edges of what was a historic pit in here, we can remediate those sites a little more cost effectively, but it's still very expensive to remediate and build this, which is why they're in phase 3 and 4, because we need to accumulate funds to do those things. And then just the rest of the site is challenging, just looking at the topography out there, the amount of mass earthwork you have to do just to get it to be buildable. But in addition to that, the earth that is out there has been touched, so it's unconsolidated to a varying depth. So you actually have to pick it all up and put it back down and recompact it. So that's one of the challenges that prior developers faced with trying to make this economically feasible. So of course that pushes us into higher densities, which brings us to this PUD. I'm not going to read you the PUD criteria because Tammy went through a really nice presentation about what those are, but I am going to show you how we satisfy those criteria, and the first one is the comprehensive plan. The environmental quality one, which is let's not have something that's going to promote pollution and those types of things. You see where that site is with respect to Riverstone, and later on you'll see our pedestrian and bicycle network and how it provides a significant amount of connectivity both to the west, the north, and the east. When we talk about parks and recreation, I think we've got that one squared away, and it helps when you've got a city and an urban renewal district that's passionate about public spaces. You've seen that area before. We're currently under contract to do about $6 million worth of shoreline stabilization and public space improvements in there, and construction is starting. If you drive by there, you'll see equipment moving in. When we talk about improving water quality and encouraging waterfront development for the public's use, these are examples of what's going to change out here. What you currently see out there now is something like this, where people scamper down to get to the water. And several of those areas we'll be building little trails like that so people can now access it without eroding the shoreline. In this particular area here, which was actually where the logs were channeled into the mill at that point, and the chain drew them out of the water up into the headwork. It'll be changed into something that looks like this. And what was historically a shoreline that looked very similar to what NIC looks like, we're going to restore that shoreline to something that looks like that. In areas where you don't want to promote public access, but they need some serious remediation here and in areas like this, we'll go in and put a rockery wall. And I get a lot of questions about why a rockery wall, because this looks very complicated, which it is, and it looks very expensive, which it is. The choices are, if you were to do a conventional riprap project, you would first go in and cut all the trees down, and then you would lay the slope back, and then you would put the riprap on it, because conventional riprap needs to lay at a flatter slope to be stable. When we vetted that idea with our steering committee, it was not warmly received. So we started looking at other designs, and this design allows to be built more vertically and preserve the trees in many, many locations. That's not to say that many trees won't be removed, and I'll show you a slide of that in a second. Objective 11 about community design. I think all the commissioners have had opportunity to look through the development standards, which are very detailed and provide a tremendous amount of guidance to both the review committee at Ignite and developers who may be looking at this project. Community design supporting the enhancement of existing urbanized area. This is a density map, a zoning or a density map we developed early on in the project, more out of curiosity of what was the surrounding density looking like. And obviously the darker colors are higher density. And as Commissioner Ingalls mentioned, this works out to about C11, but you can see the density of the surrounding areas here. And so we think it's a very good fit in that area. Tammy hit the phasing in the open space really well. Right out of the chute, the waterfront park provides about 25% of the open space, which is above the 10% threshold required for a PUD. Water, sewer, transportation infrastructure, the capital improvements that are necessary to support it. Water and vehicles will come in here. This is Atlas Road to give you your bearings, and this is Suzanne. Sanitary sewer is available here and also here, which are adjacent to the site. This one is further away. We actually have to extend the sewer through the city's abandoned railroad right-of-way in order to connect into this location here. That is not an ideal situation because we have to extend the sewer so far, but we don't have much of a choice because the topography doesn't allow all the wastewater to flow to the east. Connectivity, this is, we've highlighted in yellow the non-street pedestrian and bicycle circulation. So the shared use path up on Celtice, which is existing, these connection points will be constructed as part of the project. There's also a connection point through here. The trails along the waterfront, a couple of hill climbs through here to get to this Atlas Bluff area, another hill climb here that allows you to connect up to the shared use path. And then, of course, the Prairie Trail here. I like this comment or this objective when I was looking through here. Wherever possible, the natural terrain should be preserved with superior examples featured. Well, I don't know that there's a speck of soil out there that hasn't been turned over in the past. And this is when we first got onto the site in early 2018 and we're taking photographs of it. You can see how manipulated it had been. The photo on the right here shows after we had filled a portion of it using soil material that came off of I-90. It was a very cost-effective opportunity to come in and remediate a bunch of this unsuitable soil. So all of the area that you see in here has been restored, compacted, and it's ready to be built upon. Here's another view looking to the east. You can see how challenging it was. There's quite a bit of material or work that still needs to be done in this area. Again, talking about natural terrain and preserving superior areas, that's really what the shoreline stabilization part of the project is about. This is actually an excerpt from our plan. We've cropped down, and you can see in here where we're removing undesirable trees. We're preserving and protecting trees that we can keep, and then restoring that area to what it once was, which was a shoreline beach. Again, this is another area that we're actually going to lose quite a few trees. You can see the X marks in here. And when people look at these plans, of course, their eyes are drawn to that. But if you look up into here, you can see where the trees will be saved. And there's a tremendous amount of effort that went into that. We actually went out and surveyed every single tree and spent a lot of time adjusting that wall design to do our best to preserve the trees in that area. Before we actually cut the trees, we'll go out there with Bill Greenwood and his forester, mark the trees, and we'll mark on the conservative side, meaning we won't cut it until we actually get to that point. Some of them are going to come out, some of these lower trees in here. You can see ones that are leaning you're going to take out early. But the point of this is that the natural terrain is we're doing our best with what we've got, but the superior areas we're preserving. Hazardous areas, the floodway. This is the 100-year floodplain that runs along there, and you'll notice that the trails are all out of that area, and we intentionally designed the trails to be out of the 100-year floodplain. That's not to say that's completely necessary on a bicycle trail, but it is an asset. So if you think of it from the standpoint of it's something the taxpayers are paying for, we shouldn't put it in a floodway and have it be potentially damaged. And so there's been quite a bit of effort keeping that out of the floodway. And then the other really interesting part of looking through the comp plan as I was putting this presentation together is the themes that we have been using all along in the development of this project, which is not a surprise because Hillary and her staff have been part of the process. You all have been part of the process, City Council and Ignite, promoting business objectives, providing a variety of opportunities where we've got commercial opportunities over here. We have mixed-use opportunities in here. We have hospitality opportunities here that are going to be woven into the public space. So you can imagine that when this lot sells, there's going to be easements put on that person that you need to allow the public to move through it. And those are all terms of negotiation that Ignite has the ability to make with developers. So I just tried to go through here and take these objectives and highlight where they're occurring on the site and demonstrating satisfying the criteria. Same thing with growth. One of the themes early on in this was not putting a single product type in here. And we see the neighborhoods repeatedly where you go in and we have single-family homes, we have tiny homes. This is intended to be a mixture. And the development standards provide for that. And our RFP process will enforce that. And so one of the ways for you all to think about the development standards, which are tied to the PUD, are an enforcement tool. And again, part of that process will be Hillary and her staff, so they'll have a hand in that. But you can see the different product types we have in there. Make decisions based on the needs and desires of the citizenry. I had my staff putting this together earlier, and I was shocked at how many. This is just the meetings we've had with where there was not formal public input. Just like at this meeting today, there was opportunity for public input, but it wasn't necessarily formal. So these are just meetings that we had with the commission or the city council or Ignite or the Parks and Rec. This is a list of meetings where we had intentional public input, where we had an open house about the traffic impact study that was done, and we intentionally solicited input from the public. So as Tammy mentioned earlier, we've had a tremendous amount of public input. So hopefully we're reflecting those values that the public spoke to us. Moving on to some of the other criteria, the planning of the site is compatible with the location and the setting. The big thing here is it preserves the waterfront and provides appropriate residential density. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the site, taking it the compatible with the natural features of the site. We looked at these the other day, taking advantage of that topography that drops from Celtice Way here on the right and continues on down to the Spokane River. This section through here, it's a little bit flatter. This section is steeper over here, which is that section. And you can see the elevation difference between the two here. But again, the objective will be to try to create view opportunities for the higher ones looking over the lower ones. An example of height restrictions that was mentioned a little bit, the height restriction on that building and that building is 35 feet, maximum height. As you move back, the heights get taller, the maximum of 45 feet. But the objective is to allow people to look over the top. These are some of the nitty-gritty details, and I won't get into a lot of that unless you want me to. Sanitary sewer service is available. The water system has been conceptually laid out, and we've done a hydraulic analysis of it to demonstrate that we can provide water through it without impacting the system too much. The stormwater, one of the unique things we did with the stormwater, because we did have the park space in here, and the theme was natural, so it wasn't intended to have a bunch of manicured turf in it. We decided to pick up some of the stormwater from up on the roads and bring it into the park So now it gives you the opportunity to have more flexibility for the streetscape. Because when you have swales adjacent to the streets, there's not a lot you can do in there except put turf and trees that like water. By moving the water down into here, it gives us that opportunity to install streetscape up here that may not be water loving. It may be not water loving, which would be a positive thing in some instances. So again, trying to take advantage of the topography of the site. The concept parking, Tammy hit that a little bit, and she talked about, I'm showing the parking spaces here, and the one deviation that we're requesting. And I thought I'd give a little bit of an illustration of why we want that deviation, or we think that it has some value to it. The parcel that sits right here has a potential multi-use character to it. So it could be restaurant on the bottom floor and some residential above it. And here's a little analysis of it. It's a 4-story building. It's got a certain number of dwelling units with it, and it's got a restaurant on the corner here. And if we follow city code, that we need a total parking without the PUD of 147. Inside the below-grade parking here, we can't get 147 spaces. And this is not an internally ramped garage. The topography here allows you to enter one level here from the waterfront street, and because this is sloping down, you would enter the second level here. So non-internally ramped garages are very efficient, but even with that efficient garage design, we can't park it under the current standards. So gosh, that really fun restaurant that would have been there now becomes a bigger challenge. So what we're asking of the commission is allow us to have a deviation to that. So instead of having 1 per 200, we have 1 per 250, and allow us to put 250 with a proviso that they'll be within 650 feet, which people should be willing to walk. And if they're not, they should be willing to. Those spaces exist within there. So there's something like 30 spaces within that area. The locations that we envision applying this in order to attract a restaurant tenant there are the development area that might be there, here, the waterfront one, and the one on this corner. And I think you guys can look at it from the commissioner's standpoint to seeing the value of having a waterfront restaurant there and the idea of stimulating someone to come and do that. And that's just one of the features as we looked through it that we thought was important. My drawing got messed up here. Tammy mentioned the open space area, so I won't jump into that too much. She also talked about the Master Association, which Coeur d'Alene and Ignite will be governing the Master Association for a period of time, which I think is interesting. I'm sure there's lots of developers that are snickering about that because those things are a challenge sometimes to manage. So in our assessment, here's the plan unit development criteria. We believe we've checked all the boxes on it, and we satisfy those requirements. We also think that from the subdivision criteria, we've also checked a lot of those boxes. I think as Chris Bosley wrote in his staff report, it's probably not terribly surprising because the city's been involved with it, and so they've been shaping this process all along. So hopefully we have checked all the boxes, and we'll move forward with an approval tonight. So I'm glad to answer any questions.
Questions? It's not.
Chairman Messina, can I hit the one question about the gentleman? Can I preempt the question about the dock?
Dock.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll zip back to that. And the plan that, this is the challenge with publishing concept plans. That is a concept that shows that dock location. We actually have submitted applications for it. It's a little bit, let me go back to another one here. It's a little bit misleading about the distance here. It almost looks like it's out halfway into the river. The river here is about 410, 415 feet wide. This is 85 feet. So this dock is probably not spatially correct in this imagery here. The fact of the matter is that jurisdiction lies with Idaho Department of Lands, as the gentleman said. Those encroachment permits have been submitted, and they'll be working on processing them. That dock is actually not part of the current project. It's not funded. But we were working on other encroachment permits here for the waterfront park, and so we just thought we'll submit that as well. Because there are some members of the public that love that idea, to have a day-use dock there. There are other members of the public that hated that idea. One other note is the pilings that still exist out here, which are not going to be removed as part of this project, extend actually out into that area. So this dock is within the existing pilings that are out there. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome. I know I sped through that, but I was trying to be respectful of your time.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
great, thanks, Phil. I'll go to our sign-up sheet, and I have Toby Sheldon. Come on up, Toby.
Not even going to bring my notes.
Just state your name, and I'll swear you in, Toby.
Toby Sheldon,
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, you got a couple of minutes, go right ahead.
Okay. First question to you, Mr. Engels. You said that the scope of the commission was very narrow based on what I started to talk about. Would you please explain that to me? So maybe everything that I was going to say, did I understand you correctly?
I'm not sure, sir. That comment was for a previous presentation having to do with the health corridor, where I had
I thought
said-
you were making reference, because the health corridor was the individual that spoke of that. I thought you made reference to something I had said earlier.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, when I was talking
Okay,
about
that's fine.
the
That's
scope
fine.
of the decision that we make up here, it was with respect to the health corridor, whether or not it complied with the comp plan, not whether or not
Okay.
public funds should be used.
All right,
and
that's
that
fine.
sort of thing.
Let me go back to what I started to say. I have been opposed to this whole project because the city had no business, in my opinion, buying the property. It should have been an individual developer do it. But you're there, so now we go forward. You have some real issues. I'm not sure on the presentation of the staff, 8 to 10 year policy or program, you're going to end up like John Stone if you have a downturn in the economy and the public taxpayer is going to be the recipient of lack of performance. I think you should expedite the process much more quickly, go forward in at least a 4-year max program, and I think you're going to have a hard time finding developers out there right now because they're picking up everything, and you all know that. The waterfront, I don't think Welch Comer would have said anything about that dock. The visual display on the map was certainly explained by him, but I don't think he would have done it had I not said anything before that. Stabilization of the bank is very important, more important than anything from my perspective. I said I lived on the river for 11 years. I still own property on the river. I've lost 2 feet in the last 10 years on that property from erosion. So it has to be done correctly, not expensively, just cautiously. So as you look at the whole project, make darn sure you have the numbers together, because I don't think you have the numbers together yet. It's all subjective, and you need to be very specific in how you approach it. If you agree to this proposal, so be it, but I think you should have some harder numbers in front of you before you make an ultimate decision. That's my 2
Thank
cents
you.
worth.
Appreciate it. Next on the list, I have Kevin Bowman, did not wish to speak. And if anyone changes their mind to speak, please come up to the podium if I call your name. Dallas Thompson did not wish to speak. Christian Lindstrom did not wish to speak. Barbara Wick did not wish to speak. Ron Wick did not wish to speak. Kurt Katzer did not wish to speak. Joette Katzer did not wish to speak. Jim Van Sky did not wish to speak. Teresa Van Sky did not wish to speak. Ryan Donald did not indicate whether or not to speak or not. That's how I have everyone on my list. Is there anyone that wishes to speak that did not sign up? Come on up and just tell me your name and I'll swear you in and you can sign the sheet later.
My name is Randy Colbert.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
Go right ahead.
Just here maybe to present a different perspective. I've lived in a property overlooking this site for over 3 years, so I look at it daily, I pray about it daily, I talk to other people about it daily. And I think the picture that's coming across tonight is that it's an ugly, ugly site, and that's not true. It's a spectacular, beautiful property, not just with views down to the river. It has 365-degree views, and to lose track of that would be kind of a mistake. I like the percentage of the open space, but it's not consolidated. You know, people don't use an open space here and another open space over there. We like to have McEwen Park together. We like to have City Park together. We like to have Tubbs Hill together. The section that, the landfill came from the I-90, that's absolutely gorgeous. And to stand there now and in the future to see yourself surrounded by homes and things, and I'm not anti-growth. I think we just need to move the development into a different spot than it is now. You know, I want to see people there. I want to see people in that open space, you know, bumping shoulders and getting to know each other and so forth. But when it's separated the way it is now, that's harder to do. You don't, get out and mix up with people on street corners and streets and things the way you do in an open space like McEwen Park and City Park and so forth. So that's all I needed to say.
Okay, thank you.
God bless you. I mean, this is a huge thing you're doing, and thank you for stepping in to do it. I'll support whatever you do.
Thank you. And just make sure you're signing the sheet later before you leave. Thank you. That's it for, okay, come on down.
Hi. I'm Heike Jenert.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Go right ahead.
I just want to second what the gentleman said, who just spoke here. You know, when I go down there to that particular spot, I think it's beautiful because it's just nature, just how it was, made by God, And and when I look at this plan here, it kind of looks like Riverstone, It's a sea of apartments. And who really goes down there to spend time there? See, I don't live near to the river. I live on Ramsey and Hanley. And there, lots of other people live there too. And it's really rarely that we go down to Riverstone to do what? There is really not much to do. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's really expensive to go out to eat. I'm wondering about everyday Coeur d'Alene citizens who don't have so much money. We are paying $1,000 for rent right now, and a lot of people have low-paying jobs. So for us to come down to Riverstone and spend money at a restaurant, it's almost impossible. And even to make the time to go down there to walk around a little bit there, on the park, even though that park is beautiful, don't get me wrong. But, that's an effort. But we have already Riverstone, which is fine. But why do we want to create something new like Riverstone, Can't we do something different, what the gentleman said before me? You guys purchased that property, right? With the money of the taxpayers, is that right? Is that how it is? So I think, You guys ought to be doing something for all citizens of Coeur d'Alene, even for us who live all the way on Hanley and Ramsey, or for us who live in trailer parks, or for us who live in a one-bedroom apartment with 2 or 3 people. Because that's the reality right now, that we have people in this town with a lot of money. They come from California, they sell their homes for $500,000, they can buy one here. But, you know, we have a lot of young people and middle-aged people and probably also older people who can't afford to live here anymore. You guys really got to think of those people. I mean, those are the people who keep our city going. You know, they are the ones who work in the restaurants, who clean, you know, who sweep the streets. We don't want to forget those people. So I would propose something totally different. I don't know why I kind of stolpered into this business, into this meeting. But having another Riverstone is, I don't think it's a good idea. But thank you for letting me speak and listening for so long. I appreciate it.
Can I
Thank
respond to you?
Yeah.
We actually did take that. That was our initial thought. Our
Right.
reaction is this, that we saw Riverstone, that it didn't have access to the public, and that you couldn't flow and park your car or ride your bike or walk your dog. So this gives you a very large parking lot, so you who are coming from Hanley can park. You can, and that, it's hard to judge. That's a very large park that you're looking at. And we kept the roadway along the water totally open. There's nothing between
yeah,
you.
look,
It's a walk, it's a.
Right, I don't want to interrupt you, but what the gentleman said before me, that made really sense to me. Just the way it is now, without the apartments, it's kind of a piece of nature still, you know? But as soon as the apartments come, this is all lost, and it's going to be lost forever. You know, I mean, we are not going to be able to take these apartments down in 10, 20, 50, whatever years. They're there forever. And this is just my thought, do you know what I mean? Everybody thinks about it differently, you know? But this is city property, and this is bought by with money from taxpayers. So we definitely, you know, want to keep that in mind.
We have, all the way through.
All right.
We really have.
Okay. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for letting me speak.
really
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Come on up. Just state your name, and I'll swear you.
Sarah Williams.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You know, I definitely have, there's a part of my heart that really agrees with the other 2 people in front of me, being part of that seasonal job market where you're making very low wages and you're living on a high, and I totally understand that. But I do value the compromises that you guys have made. As a frequenter of this currently semi-wildland area, it's a rare find to have in this area that hasn't been chopped to bits by development. But to have that, the opportunity to have it, even a sliver maintained for public space is genuinely appreciated from my standpoint. I know it's not wild, but there's not a lot of appreciation for that concept, especially in the urban environment. But this is a good step in the right direction, and I genuinely appreciate that, especially as the younger market is struggling in that group. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Tammy, can you make sure we get those 3 people to sign on the sheet?
Yes.
Thank you. If there's no one else, I'm going to just close the public testimony on this side. Oh, I'm sorry. You do have some time to come back. I almost forgot about you. I'm tired of seeing you up here all the time.
Thank you, Chairman Messina. I do want to, there were several good, all of them were good comments, and I just wanted to address them as best that I could. The gentleman's comment about the 8 to 10-year absorption period, there will be no delay with trying to have this absorbed. Ignite's intent and the city's goal is to sell this as quickly as possible. There's also this balance you need to strike to not flood the market, and our real estate advisor will help us through that. So the 8 to 10 absorption timeframe is on the outside. The objective would be to get it done as soon as practically possible. The other comment about the shoreline stabilization, that project has actually been designed by a coastal engineer that works on rivers like this all over the place, and it's been put out to bid, and it's actually going to start construction here in probably 3 weeks. So that's another component that has been very carefully thought through, designed. We worked through with all the regulatory agencies involved, DEQ, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, KEA, did a tremendous amount of coordination with them, Corps of Engineers. So we put a tremendous amount of effort into that. Some of these things aren't your guys' purview, which is why I wasn't necessarily hitting on them. I could stand here and talk for a couple hours about it. The other comment about the funding actually to purchase this parcel was from the wastewater utility. It was loaned in order to purchase the property. So it's not actually taxes, it's ratepayer fees. Cities are allowed to do interfund loans like that. The money does have to be repaid to the wastewater department, and the city administrator is very anxious to have it repaid, and I think Mike Becker behind is very anxious to have it repaid as well. So, and that concept that the gentleman and the lady mentioned earlier about why doesn't the whole thing just stay a park? Early on, when we were working through the community meetings, that topic came up a lot, and that idea actually floated around for a while. But you just can't make it pencil, and coming up with $8 million, you would have to run through some sort of general obligation bond, and the leadership at the city decided we're going to move in this direction. And then also the idea about why isn't it being done by a private developer? I think the city's take on that is it sat there for 12 years with a private developer not able to do it. The way that the city can do it is because they have a partner in Ignite that has financing mechanisms available to them that developers may not have. So hopefully I've addressed the topics that the folks brought up, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Mike.
I have a quick question, Phil, and I think I want to present it in such a way that it can be an opportunity to bring a few, we do have newer citizens in the area that may not have truly understood the timeline. So if you could maybe go back to that slide that showed, I think it was just one slide that talked a little bit about what's happened over the years, starting back in, I think, 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the first kickoff meeting.
And if you could just kind of elaborate just a little bit
Sure.
so that everybody can understand, again, for those, again, who have perhaps moved into the area and not understood that there has been a lengthy process to get us to where we are tonight.
That is a good introduction. It did start back, as I mentioned, kind of working in reverse chronological in February of 2018 with a meeting that was here. And then it moved forward from that point with a bunch of public meetings where we had open houses, took community input, and it really shaped the proposal that you see in front of here. We actually would present pictures to the community. Do you like this kind of landscaping or that kind of landscaping? And then they would vote, and we developed histograms of them and presented them to the steering committee. And as the lady mentioned, the more natural style park won out. And so when this park is developed, you're going to see clover grasses instead of manicured grasses, which I'm not sure, white clover is not something that I would like, but the parks director, it's low maintenance, it looks natural. So that theme will be consistent where we can. But we did go through quite a few meetings here that had a lot of public input, and then just the continuing meetings with Ignite, the city commissions, and developing the design. So there was a tremendous amount.
How many people, if you could guess, have been involved? I mean, if you were to take a wild guess, even a couple
I would
thousand?
say at the community meetings, we would have, 75 or 100 people at the meetings when we were doing open houses, except the one we had here one night, and it was in February. I think there was a massive snowstorm, and nobody could get here. But there's been a tremendous number of people involved. The other thing that we've worked hard to do is reaching out to the regulatory agencies that are involved with us, and did a lot of coordination with them. Part of this is we're trying to demonstrate best practices to the rest of the development world on how you can do it. And of course, we'll hear the comment that, yeah, because you have an unlimited budget, which is completely untrue. Tony back there will tell you that we don't have an unlimited budget, and so will Commissioner Mandel. So it's been a very carefully put together project as much as we could. As you guys know, lots of times people will come to you and say, I've never even heard about this project. When did this come along? And you do your best to reach out and Hillary's created a great web page, and Councilmember Miller on the city's website that has a lot of information on it. So we've done our best.
Thank you, Phil. I just want to make sure that anybody that's watching tonight and maybe hearing about this for the first time, which I'm sure there will be a few,
Yeah.
Understand the scope of where we've come from to where we are tonight. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
This is going to come to us, and we'll make a decision on it. And then moving ahead, if you can just perhaps touch on I know what the RFP means, and I kind of know the process, and you've put that out there, but the general public might not know what that means with Ignite being involved, saying we're going to try to sell the land as quickly as possible. So if you can touch on that just a little bit so the general public who is listening and perhaps watching this at some point in time might understand what that RFP process is and how that actually kind of gives the direction of what you proposed and what the city and all the workshops have worked towards this point.
Sure. That's a good point. Sometimes I gloss over the acronym. So RFP stands for Request for Proposal. Ignite has the ability to request for private entities to come and submit them a proposal. And they can shape the requirements of that proposal. What do we want a developer to tell Ignite so they can evaluate them objectively with the criteria? So Heartland, which is our real estate advisory group that advises public entities all across the western United States, as part of our team, helped us develop the RFP. It has specific criteria in it. What's your financing package? How closely do you follow the development standards? What are your terms and conditions? Do you want Ignite to carry the project forever, or are you going to cash us out on day one? All those criteria go into a submittal from the developer. Tony collects those submittals. He has a steering committee that's made up of city staff, Ignite staff, consultants who are used to looking at this stuff, Heartland, commissioners from the Ignite board. I can't remember if there's a city administrators on there as well, maybe a council person. So those folks all look at those submittals and rank them individually, and then get together and evaluate them, and then make a proposal to the Ignite board. And then at that point, the Ignite board can say, we're going to have an award to negotiate exclusively with one developer for this particular parcel. And so a developer can come in, and this was intentional, can come in and put a proposal on one parcel, which is one block. Because some developers don't have millions and millions of dollars to buy big parcels. And Ignite and the city wanted to make this property available to the guy that can afford to, or gal that can, go build 20 homes, and also the developer that can go build 200 homes. And that will also work into the process. So there's a tremendous effort that if this is approved, and when the RFPs go out, that Ignite will undertake to receive these proposals and then vet them, because we're hopeful to see several proposals.
And that's tied into the design standards, which again was mentioned here. So if you can touch on kind of how we came about those design standards a little bit, but as well as during the course of the time that this all took, there was a developers meeting, which as well gave you some guidelines or insight on what should be, as well as the plan that we see that it could change a little bit, but it's not as though some other developments in town have changed so dramatically that it doesn't even look like what we're talking about. So if you can kind of touch on that a little bit to give some comfort level.
Yep, that's another good observation, Chairman Messina. When we were putting the development standards together and we were actually presenting them to this group said, what do the developers think? And we had been polling a few developers to see what they thought, but we hadn't done a pretty robust method of polling the developers. So what we did is we conducted an open house for developers in this very room. We showed them drafts of these standards. Our real estate consultant has communicated with folks one-on-one. When this has been in the newspaper, Hillary gets tremendous numbers of phone calls. I do as well. And we just direct them all to the real estate consultant, because we need to keep an arm's length relationship so we're not unfairly tipping the scales. And so we send them to the real estate consultant. They provide them input and answer questions. The developers fed back to us. We actually did surveys with them, which shaped some of the information that you see in the development standards. I didn't go through these because there's quite a number of pages, 70 pages of them, but this, I'll just scroll through them that shows the examples, and Tammy did use some of these slides. And the intention here is to demonstrate the character that Ignite and the city expect, but also demonstrate the flexibility. And I'll just scroll through to one of the areas of development. So these are the areas of development. And as I mentioned, this area of development will go out to RFP as well as that one, that one, that one. Those are the first ones to go out as phase one. One developer may come in, builder may come in and make a proposal on that one, and another developer may be there, or you might get one that makes a proposal on all of them. There's different product types here. This one can have single family, this can have townhomes, that has multifamily, this has commercial and mixed use in it. So we were trying to hit all the lanes to open them up to all the different types of developers and builders out there. And then when you start to zoom in on a development area, you can see that we, GGLO, an urban planner, has developed different scenarios. This is development area 3. It could be townhomes. It could be townhomes in the front and multifamily in the back. It could be townhomes in the front and multifamily configured like that. And the idea is to stimulate the creativity of the developers and let the market then drive the absorption of this, but within the white lines that we've painted with this, and hopefully you all approve. But that's the objective of the development standards.
Okay. Any other questions before we say goodbye to Phil? We might not see him up here again for a while. If not, okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate it, Phil. Very much so. And at this time, I will close public hearing. And before I bring it to the board, Hillary, can you tell us, once our decision is made, kind of where this goes from here?
Yes, so the two decisions before you tonight are approving the planned unit development and the subdivision. So the planned unit development, the next step would be to finalize that. They submit a final development plan, and that just comes to the planning department. It does not come back to the planning commission, but it's something that would be on record if anybody wanted to come by and look at that. And it basically just puts the whole package together. So it's something that city staff uses when the building permits come in after the land is disposed of for development. And then we can review it, make sure it is consistent with what was approved. The other step is that the platting. So the subdivision before you tonight is a preliminary plat. So we're doing a master plat. And so there's different ways that could move forward. So it could either come forward and just platting into bigger blocks, or it could be all of the lots shown on the exhibit that you've received. And what's important with that is they have to submit all the improvement plans, so all the departments review that and make sure that utilities are going to be appropriate, everything's going to be designed appropriately, and then we'll be able to start the development process.
Great. And we need to make 2 sets of findings, because we have...
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the first one is the planned unit development, and then the second one is the subdivision.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'll bring it to the commissioners to have discussion, and go right ahead, Peter.
I'd just like to make some overall comments following up on Ms. Fleming's comments on what we're trying to do. If you've attended several of our meetings and see what has happened, if you look at the the beaches, if you will, you have Sanders Beach, you have Tubbs Hill, you got City Beach, then you got the beach around NIC. And as you then go down the river, you come to Bell River, and that's nice, and the public access there is a dock. You get to walk the dock. You go down a little further, you have this property. You go down further, and you had a property that first came in as a bunch of apartments, and came in as apartments and houses, but everything was built along the river. There was no access to water. Then you go down further down the river. I think there's one park down there, Johnston Park, but there's nothing there. That's it. Here's an open piece of property. The city and Ignite, they're taking a pretty good sized risk. If it was easy to do, somebody else would do it. But if the city doesn't do it, it won't be done. Not as a park. I very hopeful that you'll sell the property quickly, but I believe in Riverstone you still have some property out there that's not been built on. We had a month or two ago, we had somebody come in here and had a development, and they had held the property, I think, for 10 years, or for a long period of time. So it is going to be, there's going to be some challenges, but we can't forget what we're getting. We're getting water. We're getting the river. Now, the one thing that comes to my mind is that we're setting a precedent here with other PUDs. And I say that is great if the other PUDs can put in 39 or 41% open space. So as you know, I don't make motions for various reasons, but I certainly support this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead. John, go ahead.
Commissioner Luttrop stole a little of thunder, and that's great. And I was just going to say that, you know, the nature of this project is to preserve the waterfront, is to provide generous open space to the public and secure all of that, and mainly the waterfront, and make it more inviting. Previous waterfront developments, in my mind, aren't as inviting or accessible. As Lynn points out, parking for me, living upland to drive down to and whatnot, we sit up here and we see these PUDs after PUDs that struggle to make 10% open space. And it's not even a requirement to be public open space, and they're struggling to make it 10% open space. And for this to have 25 acres of open space, 100% of the waterfront is for the public, and it's inviting. You pull off that pro forma, and you do it with making the density at a very reasonable 11 units an acre. You know, I think you've outdone yourselves clearly. So kudos to you, and one quick kudo, Phil, to you. The way you've done your presentation here tonight, I think, is very effective, in that you walked us. We have to make findings. This is all about findings, not whether we subjectively like something or not. Are the findings there, and are they met? You've kind of done our homework for us. You've addressed each one of those as you've gone, and tied it to the findings. So kudos, that was very effective. Thank you.
Any other comments before I bring it for?
I'd like to,
Go ahead.
just a brief comment is that, and again, I would support Commissioner Luthrop's and Commissioner Ingalls' comments. I can't be prouder, honestly, of the work that's been done. Multi-agency, city community interactions. This is not done typically in community. This is a very difficult thing to do. And to have successfully got it to the stage where it is, and to have it a chance to truly optimally utilize that property in a way that benefits at least as many citizens as possible, preserving the open space, preserving access to the water, potentially being a job creator, creating wealth for the community. I mean, all those things, if you want to check off all the boxes, I mean, I really, at least in the limited time I've been on the Planning Commission, this is an extraordinary project. And I think it'll have both visibility here, locally, regionally, and perhaps even nationally as it succeeds going forward. So I really, I thank you all for the effort that you've undertaken here, and it has my full support.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I would add one additional comment. I think that the preserving the waterfront was first and foremost a priority that doesn't pay for itself, and I kind of commend the work of the team and the agencies so far to make that kind of statement of economic feasibility. And I think more importantly, the type of development reflecting the development standards, the diversity in housing types, building types, retail, commercial. I hope it does inspire creativity. I hope it also addresses some of the challenges we have for different kinds of housing in this community, and that it presents a third place for people to congregate, especially on that waterfront. So I'm excited to see this move forward.
Thank you.
I want to make a quick comment too, and this is in regards to the previous comment regarding the fire station, the need. Eventually there will be a need for another one, we know that. But I'm also thinking of this from a realtor's perspective. highest and best use, I think that's the best approach for this particular project, simply because in that process, we will determine if a developer's opportunity and the benefits that come with that perhaps will allow them to develop something that's going to add to our tax base and continue to add jobs and/or address the housing issues. Again, all addressing our comprehensive plan. And I really, truly believe that if the highest and best use, when the time comes to site a fire station down in that area, then that decision can be made at that time. If the decision is to be made to site it somewhere else because, again, that property is deemed to be more valuable in the creation of all the other things that we've talked about tonight, I think that's wonderful, and I think the options are still out there in the open, and I'm excited for how this is going to all play out, so I'm in support of it.
Lynn, please.
It's all been said. I think it's a tremendous vision. We are growing so quickly, and if we can keep people living centrally and get them out of their cars, on their feet, on their bikes, walking, moving different ways, then we won't have as many people groaning about the roadways. All we hear is complaints about traffic here. Keep them home, keep them live, work, play. Let them get on their feet and get moving. We'll be all healthier for it. So I'm a real advocate of this. I think it's a tremendous way to live urban. And this is an urban lifestyle. And we are certainly rapidly moving toward an urban environment. You know, we just can't keep it all wild, but we've got a lot of parklands in this lovely state of ours. So I'm really, I think it's a fabulous solution.
Well, my comment is before I ask for the two motions, I want to thank Phil and his company, because I don't remember when we had our first meeting in Seattle. It seems like years ago when we first did this. And to me personally, it feels like, you know, a child going off to college, because I want to thank this commission for the hours and time that you guys gave on this particular project and all the meetings and the workshops. Tony, I applaud you for Ignite stepping up to the plate, for making this happen, and staff. Thank you guys, because if it wasn't for staff, this wouldn't happen either, for the hours and time and the amount of paperwork that goes into this. So at this point, I'll move it on to a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on November 12th, 2019, and there being present a person requesting approval of PUD-4-19, request for a plan unit development known as the Atlas Waterfront. The applicant is the City of Coeur d'Alene. The location is 60.9 acres located at 2598 East Celtice Way, and I'll let the rest roll. It's the old Atlas Mill site. The findings, we followed the justification points B1 through B7, which are boilerplate. Moving on to B8, pursuant to section 17.07.230, a planned unit development review criteria, planned unit development may be approved only if the proposal conforms to the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. And I'm just not going to go through the whole list, but we're touching on the natural environment, preservation of the river, access to the river, and a sensitive one at that. Preserving vistas, 360 degrees, and then parks access for the public, for all people, and a general community design that's embracing multiple choices in housing, not just single-family dwellings, which really brings me forward. Open space, and we use the efficiency. We're working with our natural terrain. We have a difficult site, no question. A mound of junk is what we have, and we're making it be livable, which is amazing. Connectivity, we'll connect through to Celtice easily. We can go up Atlas easily, and there's just, it's, again, keeping people off the roads and in their homes, we hope, easily. We are taking care of our shoreline. And then the economic environment, driving and bringing in and allowing for offices, whether they're medical, hair salon, restaurants, maybe a little hotel. It gives us a lot of opportunities. We also have access through pedestrian and bicycle environment. The Rails for Trails is awesome, and we're just going to keep on moving that through our community. The home environment, we're managing growth. We're keeping our living accommodations close to our heart of our city, which I think is brilliant. Again, we're connecting into recreation, access to the river, kayaking, dog park. My dog would love that. So we've got so many things that are potentials in this area. I think we've started on a very high point. Goal 4, the administrative environment. We're going to be working with our city services throughout this process, and the public participation has been very high. B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is based on all of the slides that we've seen. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with location, setting, and existing uses in adjacent properties. I think it's been very thoughtfully addressing the topography, the river, and I think it was very, very carefully planned out. B8C, the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. In the case of property located within the hillside overlay zone, and it does not create soil erosion, sedimentation of the lower slopes, slide damage, or flooding problems. We even address some of the water downflow that we are capturing, which is also very thoughtfully done. B8D, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing and new streets, public facilities, and services. This is based on a lot of plans and a lot of site analysis. B8E, the proposal does provide adequate private, common, open space area. And as we said, 39% open space. I could wish for more than 10 at any given time, and look what we've got. Let's hope we can hold on to it. We will hold on to it. B8F, off-street parking, does provide parking sufficient for users of the development. We did have to make a deviation so that we can address a restaurant, but we do need, we had to build a lake down in Riverstone to get waterfront restaurants around here. So I was really happy to see them bring the thought of bringing a waterfront restaurant. B8G, that the proposal does provide for an acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of common property through a master HOA. And in conclusion, the Planning Commission, pursuant of the aforementioned, finds that the request of the City of Coeur d'Alene for approval of the planned unit development as described in the application should be approved. And with all the special conditions that apply underneath that, 1 through 12. 15, pardon me, 1 through 15. It's mostly land-driven stuff.
Thank you. I have a
Okay.
first. Looking for a second.
Second.
I have a second. Roll call. Shannon, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Rumpler.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. PUD-4-19 is approved. Lynn, would you like to continue?
John's good at this.
Come on, you can do this.
Okay, introduction. This matter having come before the Planning Commission on November 12th, 2019, and there being present a person requesting approval of item S-3-19, a request for a 415 preliminary plat known as the Atlas Waterfront 1 Edition. The applicant is the City of Coeur d'Alene. The location, as stated before, is 60.9 acres located at 2598 East Saltese Way. We'll find the usual boilerplate B1 through 7, noticed and so on. B7-8, that all the general preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer or his designee. And this is based on following the municipal code. B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-ways, easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are adequate. This is also based on all the input through all the departments throughout the city. B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15 and all the subdivision improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40 requirements. That's based on city charter. B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. And we've got all the various divisions and developments of different types that we've covered. And the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of the City of Coeur d'Alene for preliminary plat of approval as described in the application should be approved. Special conditions applied at the motion are that any additional main extensions and/or fire hydrants and services will be the responsibility of the developer. An unobstructed city-approved all-weather access shall be required, and that there's a Mill River lift station surcharge, and a few other points, and it goes down to a total of 15, following the same as previously.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lynn. I have a first, looking for
I'll second.
I have a second. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Rumpler.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Thank you. S-3-19 passes. Congratulations for all the hard work, everyone.
Yes, that's good.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing what happens.
Next
Yeah.
motion?
Well, before I make the motion,
Oh, he's gonna,
I'm sort of stepping in on John's territory, because I think last time he talked about this, but these are exciting times in November. And today was the start of Leaf Fest. Now, those of you that haven't been in Coeur d'Alene very long, Leaf Fest is, in my opinion, a very unique thing. You put all your leaves out in the road,
It's the highlight of my year.
and people pick it up, and you get to wave at all the people that do the snow removal and everything. But it is quite an adventure, and it's a heck of a good deal for us property owners, and probably for the fire department, because we don't have to burn the leaves. But it's a thing. Now, we're coming on to also a holiday in the end of the month here, and our chairman traditionally gives us the holiday season greetings, so I will defer Thanksgiving to Mr. Chair.
Okay, I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And John, I'm so glad that Leaf Fest, as Peter puts it, is the highlight of your life. I won't say any more than that.
That's my life.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get me out of here.